instead of layer.property phi, you can just say layer.property effects dot property transform, and let this be dot property 4. So a while back when I was testing my pop script, which just allows you to click a button and have a transform effect that scales up from a certain point to a certain point in the composition, that functionality, I showed you how I cannot use it for multiple layers. It was just not working. Well, today I figured out how to make it work and exactly what the problem was. However, this one check effect thing I'm still not figured yet, but that's again an added functionality. So if I select, I'm going to come and delete this first. If I just have the top one selected and I run the script, okay, wait, let me get rid of this completely. Okay, if I just have this one thing and I run the script, it does what I want it to. It pops that from here to here. Let me undo it. If I have both the pack shots selected and I run the script, look at that, I have both coming in. And if I have all three, even the table selected and run the script, wow, all three are happening at the same time. And this is huge. Now let me tell you why it wasn't working. Before I come here, I want to show why it was not working, what the problem was. So I'm going to come in here and just set up like a very basic script to show what we were trying to do. And variable layers is common to selected layers. We were running a for loop and everything was fine up until here. Okay, we were running a for loop, we're going through all of these. We were adding a transform effect to all of these. So layer.add property this transform effect. All of this was up until here, it was fine. So you see here we've basically run a for loop for the number of selected layers, right? And we've added the transform effect, which is Adobe Geometry 2. That's the match name for transform effect. We've done that till here, and then we did a variable scale property is here. This is where it wasn't working. So naturally what I did was variable scale property is layer.property effect.property transform.property scale. This is how I was doing it, and then I was setting the value for scale to go from 0 to, for here, let's for simplicity, in the khud script I have the functionality where I can go from point A to point B, but here just for simplicity I'll go from 0 to 1, going from 0 to 100. Okay, this is all running inside a for loop. I think this should just work. If I just have one layer selected and I run this script, it over 1 second goes from 0 to 100. Okay, that is all fine. It adds a transform effect. Let me just add an undo group so that okay. So now if I select two layers and run this, you're gonna get this error, and this error has tested my patience beyond I can explain. Let me show you the error dialog box. You cannot see it actually. It's all for the 2:1 cinematic aspect. I have to do these things. Okay, so what is the error? Let me just my god, run this again, undo it. With these two layers selected, I run the script, I get this error, null is not an object. Now the classic way of when you get stuck into a situation like this to debug why something is not working is by using alerts as flags, so to speak, and I'll explain what that means. What we're doing is, as we're going through the loop, the first thing we're doing is adding the transform effect onto the layers. So I'll alert here as a flag saying transform effect added. Okay, so every time transform effect is added to the layer we get an alert. Then we're gonna add alerts here, so scale value 1, and after this is set we're gonna say scale value 2. Okay, now if I come in here and I do it for just one single layer first, so one layer selected, I come in here, say F5, you'll see transform effect added. We've had the first flag. Scale value 1, that means you see a keyframe was added for 0 at 0. Scale value 2, so keyframe was added at 1 for 100. Why? So that's how it worked for the first layer. Now because it's a for loop, ideally it should work for all the selected layers. I'm going to come here and select both the layers, come in here and F5. So you see transform effect added, scale value 1. Now we're still in the first layer because it's all in one for loop. Scale value 2. Now transform effect added, so transform effect as it was added to the other layer, but scale value is not being set. This is where I was getting stuck, and the problem is it's not got anything to do with the fact that it's the second layer in the sequence. If I was coming here, just the second layer selected and run the script, it would run just fine. Scale value 1, scale value 2. So it was something with the loop that was creating the problem. And this is one of those classic situations where you cannot get any sort of help online unless you actually go to one of those forums and type in your query or question and be like, this is my problem, this is my exact situation, I'm stuck here. Or if you're fortunate enough to be in touch with one of these people, like I was fortunate enough to talk to Tudor from CG Dive, where I was not being able to figure out the weight painting and stuff. But for After Effects, I literally do not know anyone. It's the only thing I have to rely on is ChatGPT, which by the way is not working for the past 2 days. I don't know what it is. And all those forums or NT Productions. And it is unlikely that this exact problem there'll be a solution for it. So all you have to do is sit and try to understand why it is not working. That is what the entire day today was, more or less. It is not the most fun process of scripting and coding, but it's part of the process. You have to go through it. So how did I figure that what the problem was? Now one of the forums that of course you have to do your research as well. One of the forums that I went through, they said 2 things, okay, in answer. One was change the language of your AE copy by going into folder languages and changing it to English. Now, firstly, I don't know where this option is for language. And secondly, I know that it is already English because After Effects for me is running in English. Now, the answer that I got to the problem was over here when I read through this. It said, the index of the effect can be easily obtained pressing Alt left click on the stopwatch for the effect parameter you want to know the index of, and look at the expression panel. You should see a line saying the name of the layer, the name of the effect followed by an index in parentheses such as this layer dot effect fast blur bracket 1 or something like that. And that is when it clicked to me, maybe it has got something to do, because see, if you look at the error, now let me just remove these flags because it's unnecessarily creating a problem. If I run both of these selected and I run it, you see the error is coming here at scale prop dot value at time, which says null is not an object. So for some reason, the second time around, not the first time around, because for the first time we have it applied and everything is working. For the second time around, it comes to apply in the transform effect, but it does not set those values. So something has to do with these values not being identified. Now scale dot set value at time, this I cross checked from the documentation, everything, this is working just fine. So the only thing that could go possibly wrong is the fact that the scale prop, what this is referring to, that itself is null, because our error is null is not an object. Now it is getting null as of like an answer. I know that this should be 4, but what I did instead first for this to work is this very simple thing. Now how do you understand that scale property is layer dot property dot effects dot property dot transform dot property dot scale? This is also something I learned from any production. Like let's say I have transform effect applied here. Okay, how do I know what scale property, how do I refer to this as a variable? So the way you do that is, let me just open one of those. Yeah, this is again the same kind of setup. I'm gonna come in here and I'm just gonna $.write-ln. This is like alert, but it just puts answers here in the console instead of like alerting every single time. Okay, now scale prop dot value. What scale prop is gonna be is layer is the first selected layer. So I'm just gonna say layers. Let's say layer is selected first layer. So layer dot property 1. Okay, and here I'm gonna write ln name. So now with this selected, when I run this, I get marker. So in this particular layer, the first property is marker. Even though you cannot see it, it's a hidden property. If I say property 2 and run it, you'll get time remap. Even that's a hidden property. If I say 3 and run it, you get motion trackers, hidden property. 4 and run it, masks, hidden property. 5 and run it, effects. So that's when you know that layer dot property 5 is layer dot property effects. So I'm going to replace this with effects. Okay, now when I run this should still give effects. That means we are on the right path. Now I want to go inside effects into transform. So I'm going to come in here and do the same process. Property 1 dot name is underneath. Oh, I misspelled it. PRO property. Okay, so you get transform. So that means you can come in here and 5 1, you can replace 5 and 1 with effects and transform. Now I want to go inside transform and check where scale is. So if I go in here and say dot property 1, so that's anchor point, which you can see over here. Then there is position, then there is uniform scale. Again, this uniform scale on and off is also a property. And then 4 is scale. So I can come in here and replace this with scale. Now if I was to run this, I would get scale. And this is how I understood that variable scale property has to refer to this. And in our code, this is what the problem is, scale property. So what I did is, let me just instead do this. Layer dot property effects, what was it, 5 dot property 1 dot property 4. Maybe the word scale or something is a problem, so I thought let's just use indices instead and see if it works. So if I come in here with 1, it's anyway working, so I'm not going for 1. I'm going to select 2 and run it, and there you go, it works. So now you see that instead of using the codes and everything, which is again user friendly for us to understand, we just use the index straight away. That works. So the loop works fine. But again, the problem here is you cannot use these things, layer dot property 5 dot property 1 dot property 4. Why? Because let's say if this is dot property 5 is effects, dot property 1 is transform. If I was to have one more effect, like let me just undo it for both. If I was to have an effect called curves here, when we're going to add the transform effect, it's going to be layer dot property 5 dot property 2 dot property 4. So if I run this is going to throw an error. So you cannot have numbers here, but what you can have is instead of layer dot property 5, you can just say layer dot property effects dot property transform and let this be dot property 4. Because now even if you have any number of layers, like for example here I already have curves, and if I select these two and I run this is still gonna work, because we are still referring to effects and the property called transform inside the property called effects, and we're referring to property 4, not scale. However, if I was to make the scale and run it, it does not work. So I don't know why this is not working. Like, it doesn't make any sort of sense, because it's actually the same thing. We ran this code here and you saw that we are getting scale as an output, so it should just work, but it doesn't work. But with 4, let me just undo it and I run it. It works. So this, I don't know what to make out of this situation, but it's just like trial and error and come up with why something is not working. And this for me is a huge learning, because I need to be applying effects through scripts all the time. And this is like one good thing I can keep in mind, that every time I'm dealing with loops, for the last property you can just go ahead and put the number instead. And again, how do you get this number? You can get this number this way, the thing that I showed you here, dot property 1 dot property 1, that way. Or you could just come in here, which is something that this guy also explained here in the thing, with transform applied. Like, let's say, let me just undo it. Let me apply a transform effect on this layer, and in this transform effect I want to know what this property is. So if I alt left click here, you'll see effect transform and bracket 4. This is the index that you're looking for. Okay, amazing, awesome learning, amazing things. Now apart from this, one more thing I want to document today's session is Moojiji. meditations. This is a YouTube channel that I knew since a long time, but yesterday I just happened to stumble across one of his videos, and he's an Advaita master, and Advaita Vedanta is one of the first proper philosophy that I got exposed to in life, and I've really found a strong inclination towards. So I'm gonna talk about two of his videos. One I was watching today. All of his videos are like kind of meditations, and the video that I watched yesterday, which was very nice, I've seen a lot of perfume videos because I'm experimenting there. Peace begins with you. This is like a 20-minute
you know how it
guided sort of meditation, and screen visible, yeah. And yeah, it's very peaceful to watch this. So I just want to put this as a recommendation if you are feeling like your mind is going all over the place, you want to do some form of meditation. This is one great resource. With that said, thank you so much for being in the Khud. I hope you got some value from this, the debugging process, and trying to understand how things work with After Effects scripting. That's it. Thanks so much for being in the Khud. I will catch you on Monday. I'll see if tomorrow something very valuable happens and I have to document it, then I'll do it. Otherwise on Monday. Peace.